This is one of the more disturbing and surreal experiences of my life. Early one morning a few years ago, I'm walking to my bus stop and eating an apple. It's about 5 a.m., it's dark, misty, and I'm thinking about something trivial, like if I want my daily Starbucks before or after the commute. As I approach a dimly lit corner on my street, a tall man in a black mask steps out of the dark alleyway to my left. Sleepy and disoriented, I barely acknowledge him. When he shouts, "Put down your purse, now," and points his gun to my head, things start to click. The man says, "Put down your bags." I tell him, Okay, I'm putting them down over here." He orders me to walk over to him, toward the alley, and get down on the ground, and I agree. I'm coming, okay. My heart is beating 1,000,000 times a minute, and my hands are still sticky with apple. And I know I need to get away. I don't know why, but my mouth won't stop working. "Look, see, I'm on the ground. My stuff is over there. Please just take my stuff." But he doesn't like it. "Shut the hell up, okay?" He gets on top of me and puts the gun to my head. At this point, I should mention the fact that I'm on my way to coach a high school practice, and I'm dressed like a dude. Huge baggy pants, hat, jacket. If not for my telltale voice, I'd look like a teen rap star from 1993. Anyway, as the guy gets on top of me, gun to my head, he looks at me and pauses. I can't tell you why I know this, but I swear that at this moment, it clicks for him that I'm a woman. He gets off me, stands up, and points to the dark alley. "Come with me." My stomach hurts. I remember that there have been a recent rash of sexual assaults in my neighborhood, during the daytime no less. When the man points down that dirty alleyway, my internal voice speaks up. Says voice number 1. "There was no way in hell you are going to go down there without a fight." "But he has a gun, you idiot," replies voice number 2. "Follow me." The real voice, the attacker's voice, screams. So I do what I do best. I talk. "I'm coming, I'm following you," I call. And the man makes a crucial mistake. He believes me. I take 1-2 tiny steps backwards toward the sidewalk, and he turns his body and his gun toward the alley. This is my moment. I take a deep breath, tuck my head down in case he starts shooting, and start sprinting away. I hear a voice screaming in a high-pitched wail before I realize that it's mine. After running 6 or 7 blocks, I head back to my apartment, hoping he's not there to see where I lived. The police check out the alleyway an hour later, but the potential attacker is long gone. The only evidence of the encounter is my apple browning in the alleyway and the adrenaline rush that I couldn't shake for days. I would be lying if I said that the experience doesn't bother me still. But I'm so fortunate to mainly be haunted by the what-ifs and not the what happened. I lived in a strange little house as a child. It was incredibly tall and thin, like an attached house except freestanding, with 3 floors, a basement, and an attic. It was full of quirks, like 2 fully functional fireplaces, a shower stall in the center of the basement, a backyard so small that you couldn't take 5 steps without hitting the fence, and an old-timey rope-pulled dumbwaiter that led from the kitchen to my bedroom. I loved that weird little place, but unfortunately it was incredibly old, and half of its charm was the fact that it seemed to have been designed by a conclave of lunatics, and eventually the repair costs exceeded what my parents were willing to sink into it, and we had to move. Getting ready for the move was a chore. I packed most of my stuff myself, and I had taken to throwing stuff down the dumbwaiter and shoving all my clothes so thickly in my closet that they became a single solid brick of fabric. While clearing that closet out, I came across something I hadn't noticed before, an attic entrance in the ceiling. Being an adventurous kid, I opened it up, stood on the closed brick, and began my first and last exploration into the topmost part of our weird little house. The first thing I noticed was that it wasn't as dark as it should have been. The place was strung with old red Christmas lights which still burned with leftover incandescence, and a dozen little cracks and holes peeped down into all the bedrooms below. The second thing I noticed was that the place was set up for habitation. The insulation was covered in plastic. There was an old gurney piled with sleeping bags and sheets, and an old rusted mint green refrigerator, which still worked when I tested it. The third thing was the bones. There were a lot of bones. I was a kid at the time with a limited understanding of anatomy, but there were bones of all types heaped into a series of piles around the center of the attic. Small and large, clean and white, from every and any imaginable sort of creature. haphazardly stacked in a half-dozen clumps. 2 of them were blackened, as if someone had tried to burn them, and the walls nearest those blackened piles were scrawled in dark bone char messages. Mostly they were just smears, but the word sorry appeared more than once. That room had been sitting over my head for 8 years while I slept. If you are enjoying this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. About 3 years ago, I was driving home from a family reunion pretty late at night, and the drive was about 2 hours. I didn't stay the night because I had to be back for work the following day. Most of the drive was on back roads with dense bushes and trees on either side, the real creepy ones you see a lot in movies. Anyway, I had been driving about 45 minutes and I was starting to get really tired. You know how sometimes you just suddenly become really tired out of nowhere? Well, yeah, that happened to me. I knew I wasn't going to last the entire trip, but I didn't come across any place that I felt I could park and safely sleep. Anyway, after it became clear to me that I wasn't going to find a place to pull over, and my tiredness wasn't going away on its own, I did something very questionable. I pulled over to the side of the road onto the grass behind some bushes to try and hide my car from anybody else who was going to drive past. The roads weren't empty. I came across another car every few minutes or so. I made a mental note that the time was 11:32 and then fell asleep. Sometime later, I was awoken by a scratching sound. I looked at the clock, 11:55. The sound stopped after a few seconds, and because I was still extremely tired, I didn't bother looking around and simply went back to sleep. I was later awoken by the same sound, and it was now 12:43. This time it really freaked me out because the sound didn't stop. The thought ran across my mind that it was just an animal inspecting the car, but why would it return almost an hour after it had left the previous time? I looked in my rearview mirror and just managed to catch a glimpse of something running away into the forest. Now, at the time, I thought it was the damn hook killer. You know, the one that scratched that couple's car and then slaughtered the guy when he got out to investigate? Forget that, I thought to myself. So I got out of there. Fast. There was a bend no more than 100 yards up the road, and as I came around it, there was a car, parked off to the side of the road with the driver's side door opened. I slowed down just to look to see if anyone was in there. There wasn't. Then I looked in my rearview mirror. I didn't see anything, and all of a sudden this guy comes sprinting around the corner. He starts screaming at me, shouting stuff like, "Hey you, get out of your car, now!" I noped the hell out of there and sped off. I never saw the guy again. To this day, I still wonder what would have happened to me if I had gotten out my car that night. I have a couple stories, one from my mother and one from me. My mother's story is probably the creepiest and has always stuck with me. My mom worked the night shift at a hospital in Arizona, in a town by the border, and go figure, it's an old mining town. Well, anyways, she's working her night shift going room to room when an old lady who walked the halls due to insomnia told her some weird goat man kept trying to get in through the doors. My mom didn't think anything of it, but she's Catholic, and said she had one of those moments of silently praying to herself. After a few moments there was a shriek. She couldn't explain it, but that it was a horrible shriek that made her blood turn to ice. She went to the nurse's station to ask if anyone else heard it, which of course they did. Come to realize that shriek was heard all around the hospital, freaking everyone out. A few of them went to look out the windows and they see hoof marks by the doors and windows, and the marks had no trail leading towards or away from the building. Did my mom encounter a skinwalker that night? Now, my story was pretty creepy too. I too am a nurse and worked a lockdown dementia unit at night. I've had creepy moments, but this one will always stick with me. I was finishing up my shift when a light goes off down the hall, so I punched my code in and went out since the other nurse was busy with someone else. I go in, ask if everything is okay. Sleepily, my patient tells me there's a darn woman who keeps knocking on her window, wanting to come in, and that she really just wants to go back to sleep. She insists I go and let her in, and I'm thinking to myself, oh no, this sounds all too familiar. I reassure her, peek out the window. See nothing. Maybe she was dreaming and really tired. After that incident, I head back into my unit, sit down, eat a snack, chat with my head nurse, talk with my usual insomniacs, Mind you, by now it's around 3 a.m. now. Light goes off, and in my unit, I head down to her hall and ask if everything is okay. My patient says he can't sleep. Someone keeps banging on his window and he is scared. I pretty much about crap myself at this point. I again reassure my patient, thinking, what just happened? I tell my co-nurse and she laughs and said, this has been happening for years.